When it comes to strange, very few things can compare to the state of Florida. And what a better source of said strangeness than the book Weird Florida. And for those of you unfamiliar with the Weird US book series, all it is it's just recorded documentation of all the strange and unusual things that go on in each state. From abandoned and forgotten places to ancient mysteries, this book covers some of Florida's most bizarre features. And speaking of bizarre, today we're going to be covering Florida's bizarre beast. And if you have noticed that I look a little different, that is correct. I got a new shirt. And with all that out of the way and the stage set, let's talk about Florida's most famous cryptid, the skunk ape. The skunk ape is definitely the unofficial mascot of Florida. Whether it's crazy stories or unbelievable sightings, the skunk ape definitely stands out. With those of you who are unfamiliar with what a skunk ape is, it's basically Florida's equivalent to a Bigfoot. The skunk ape is so popular that in 1977 the state legislature introduced House Bill 58, the Skunk Ape Protection Act. This was obviously to protect the skunk ape. Here's Representative Knuckles reintroducing the bill. And yes, I did say reintroduced. He introduced this bill 2 years in a row. What I'm also going to do is I'm going to put a link where you can read the entire thing, like them talking about it, in the description. It's insanely funny, and I found it so interesting, but obviously I can't cover the entire thing here, or this video would be 30 minutes long. But yeah, highly suggest you go read it if you're into that kind of stuff. One thing that kind of upset me when I was reading this is he has photographs that he showed these people, and I cannot find those anywhere. I don't know what they did with them. They weren't recorded with the rest of the information, and that is hugely upsetting to me because I would have loved to have seen what evidence they were using to try to prove that this thing was real and needed to be protected. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to read some of the eyewitness stories, and you tell me what you think about these. My uncle saw something that looked like a Bigfoot about 20 years ago crossing the sand road in the Ocala National Forest. He said it looked like it had a thick, stringy, hairy coat on it and was about 7 foot tall, but it was like bent over when it scurries across the road. There was another man that saw it too. My uncle called it a gorilla, but when he read something in a newspaper about people seeing the thing they called the swamp ape, he said that it was what he must have seen. By Jimmy C. There used to be one of these ape things back in 1968 that would show up around the Fair Villa Shopping Center in Orlando when I went to Edgewater High School. This was an urban area, not rural at all, which makes it even stranger. Everybody nicknamed it the Fair Villa Gorilla. The Sentinel even called it that in an article. So, those are a couple of the eyewitness stories. Now to move away from cryptids and stories, we're actually going to cover something that 100% happened. We're going to cover the Octopus Giganticus, or what the locals called the St. Augustine Monster. On November 30th, 1896, while two young boys rode their bikes along Anastasia Island, they spotted a large mass half buried in the sand. The boys went back to St. Augustine later that day and reported their sightings to a local physician, Dr. DeWitt Webb. He was the only person with a scientific background to ever see the monster on the original site where it washed up on the beach. His first thought was it had to be animal remains, and that it had been mutilated and due to its decomposition had been dead for quite some time. The color was a very pale pink, almost white. It was a rubbery substance with a hard consistency. After a storm dragged it back out to sea, the tide brought it back onto the beach 2 miles south of its original location. Webb believed that it could possibly be the remains of a giant squid. Webb sent photographs and description of the mass to Joel Allen, who worked at the Museum of Comparative Zoology at Harvard, but unfortunately Joel never responded because he's a loser. Loser. But Webb's letter did actually catch the attention of a Chad at Yale named Addison Emery Verrill. He had the best reputation and authority when it came to cephalopods. Like Webb, Verrill also thought it could be the remains of a giant squid. However, after Verrill received samples from Webb, he came to the conclusion that it could not be a cephalopod. It was most likely a chunk of fat off the head of a sperm whale. Now you gotta remember, Verrill was doing these tests all the way back in 1896 and came to the conclusion that it was whale fat. All the way in the future of 1971, they retested samples and came to the conclusion that it was in fact an octopus or squid. But then nearly a decade after the original test and sightings of the creature, In 1995, they came to the confirmation 100% that it was in fact just whale fat. But they're just a bunch of giant nerds, so what do they know? And speaking of giant, now we have the giant penguin. In 1948, several people reported finding three-toed animal tracks on Clearwater Beach. And later on, even more tracks were found on Suwannee River, 40 miles from the ocean. People didn't just see tracks, they seen the creature itself. Around the same time in the Florida Gulf, a group of people on a boat claimed they seen a massive penguin-like bird swimming in the water. Another person who claimed they seen the bird says that it was nearly 15 feet tall. Later that year, another huge bird being described as penguin-like was spotted from a plane walking along the Suwannee River. But on April 11th, 1988, it was all revealed to be a massive prank 40 years in the making. The pranksters were Tony Signorini and Al Williams. Williams was a local prankster that passed away all the way back in 1969. Signorini said they'd been inspired by fossilized dinosaur tracks and showed the reporter the shoes they used to leave the three-toed penguin tracks in the sand. They were massive and made out of iron and had to be at least 30 pounds each. But this does not explain the people claiming they seen the penguin. You had entire groups of people saying this is what they seen. Now, were those people lying for attention? Yeah, it's possible. Or is this all one big cover-up to hide that there actually is a giant penguin out in Clearwater, Florida? We might never know. And that was just some of the bizarre beasts in weird Florida. Now, I didn't cover everything, because some of the stuff was just kind of boring. It was just sea serpents and stuff. It's stuff you guys have heard about. And some of the things I just could not do research on. The only sources that the book had were people they interviewed, and the sources were their names. So for all we know, they could have just pulled half this stuff out of their butt. But these were the few things I could actually do research on and investigate. Everything else was just, oh, this lady in Okeechobee said that she seen this with no evidence, nothing else. So these were the three most interesting things, and really the only ones I could actually find other stuff about. But there's a bunch of other stuff in this book. There's creepy places, creepy people, a bunch of stuff. So if you guys did like this and you want to see more of this, let me know. Leave a comment saying other stuff you want to hear about. Give me some ideas. I want to cover games and I want to cover movies and things I'm interested in. But I also want to cover stuff you guys are interested in. So if you have anything, a niche topic, an idea for something, please let me know in the comments. If it's something cool and I'm like, hey, I want to look into that, I will make a video on it. So please, if you have anything, drop it down in the comments. And if you really enjoyed the video, please like. And if you really, really enjoyed the video, please subscribe. All the sources for everything I used today will be in the description. Also, I have a Discord channel. If you want to talk to me or hang out or see funny memes I post, go in there and check that out. But anyways, thank you all so much for watching all the way to the end. I really do appreciate it. And I hope you have a great rest of your day, and God bless. The state legislature introduced House Bill 58. The House bill is so popular